the CIA was trying to blame the FBI for 9/11. And so I became part of their defense. And so practically anybody I wanted to talk to in the Bureau, I was able to talk to. And the CIA, I talked to people in the CIA, but they weren't nearly as forthcoming. And then a lot of my questions had to do with the fact that 2 of the hijackers came to America in January of 2000, like 19 months before 9/11, and the CIA knew they were in America and didn't tell the FBI. And so they were trying to shove responsibility off of them and put it onto the Bureau. And the Bureau was not perfect, but they didn't know that al-Qaeda was in America until the CIA came and told them in late August of 2001, a month before the actual tragedy. So they didn't have the time to go out and find al-Qaeda. The reason I'm convinced that the CIA ever came to tell the FBI is that they lost them. They didn't know where they were. And so now they maybe had been planning in cahoots with the Saudi intelligence to turn these guys. That's the theory of a lot of FBI guys. But they couldn't turn them if they had disappeared. And so they didn't see them again until they showed up on TV.
So the idea here with this internal rift between the CIA and the FBI is that John O'Neill and the FBI, Ali Soufan, they wanted to find the culprits and get rid of them or arrest them. And the intelligence community, the CIA, they wanted to keep their distance and try to figure out their way to get more intelligence.
Right. There was always a conflict in the mission of these 2 bureaus. And also, but that was compounded by personal animosity. And one of the leader of the bin Laden unit in the CIA testified before Congress that one good thing happened on 9/11. John O'Neill was killed. That's the level of their hatred, and it got in the way. America could have withstood, an attack of some sort, but 9/11 was a trauma, deep wound in the country, and I still think that the CIA bears a lot of moral responsibility for that.
And so John O'Neill and mainly I think Ali Soufan, they pretty much snuffed the whole thing out, right?
Well, Ali was a unique individual.
Yeah.
He had
super young.
He was very young. He was the youngest case agent. He was in his 20s when he was case agent for 9/11, and he's the guy that identified the hijackers, and that he didn't torture anybody. He was very clever interrogator. He would, for instance, he had a little snippet of some taped conversation between 2 of these al-Qaeda guys. And so that's all he had, in this one interrogation. And he got a shopping cart, with a bunch of similar shaped cassettes, on there, and to make it look like he had this, library. And he walked into this interrogation and he just picked randomly, supposedly, this one tape and popped it in and played this bit. And the suspect's eyes are like, oh my God, they overheard my telephone calls. And what else did they know? Wow. And so he just spilled the beans. There was no more beans. There was one bean, but it was clever interrogation, of a little trickery involved, but no torture. And he's the guy that pulled the FBI out of Guantanamo and said, we don't torture people. Wow. And he was going to arrest the CIA operatives that were doing the torture. He was prevented from doing that. But he's a man of the kind of principles that we'd like for the country to stand for.
Yeah. I'm sure you know John Kiriakou, right?
Yeah, not personally, but...
Right, yeah. His story, he was the one who basically blew the whistle on the whole torture program. And look what happened to him. They sent him to prison and ruined his life.
Yeah.
Stripped him of his retirement. So where did I want to go with this? Bin Laden. So I've had people on the show, including John, actually, who talk about how in the years leading up to 9/11, we had CIA people, paramilitary folks over in Khartoum in Africa and in the Middle East, basically tracking bin Laden's every move. And in fact, there's this guy by the name of Billy Waugh, who's like this famous CIA paramilitary commando, basically, who Annie Jacobson writes about in her book, Surprise, Kill, Vanish, who was like there tracking the guy and going on daily jogs around the mosque that he would be visiting every day in Khartoum. He was taking photos of the guy. Of bin Laden. He would be like literally across the street from bin Laden, taking photos of him around the clock. And they couldn't get and then the way I understand it is, they couldn't get permission to take out bin Laden, even though they very easily could have. And as far as your understanding, why was that?
Well, at that time, there were a couple of things going on. Bin Laden was sort of laying low, and he spent, I think, 4 years in Sudan. Mm-hmm. He wasn't active. He was mainly, al-Qaeda had become a kind of agricultural institution. He was developing all these seeds that he was very proud of, and he was, he may have owned more land in Sudan than any other individual. And they played soccer and stuff like that. So it wasn't, he was anti-American, he was making noise, but at this point the king was trying to reconcile with him. And he sent Jamal Khashoggi. You may
Jamal
remember.
Khashoggi, yeah.
It was bin Laden's buddy. And although, not a follower, he was a friend of his and had spent time in Afghanistan mm-hmm. with bin Laden during the Mujahideen days. Mm-hmm. And Jamal was a reporter, and he was a friend of mine. And
really?
He was sent to Khartoum explicitly to get bin Laden to renounce terrorism. And then you'll be welcome home.
Who sent him there?
The king.
Oh.
And so the way Jamal explained it to me, he'd spent 3 days in Khartoum, and bin Laden was always very close to the point of renouncing terrorism because he was homesick. But finally, he wouldn't cross that line. So Jamal went home empty-handed, and at that point, the Sudanese decided to expel him and rob him of practically everything that he had, all of his possessions. And I went to Sudan 3 times tracking that story down. And
wow.
The first time I went, I had been working closely with the Sudanese intelligence, and because someone had referred me. And so they would drive me around and show me where bin Laden lived and the mosque and where the soccer fields were and all this sort of stuff. But I said, look, I need to talk to somebody. I need somebody in al-Qaeda. And so one day I was in in my room in what they called cheerfully the Hilton. And I'd have to flash back a little bit. The first time I flew to Saudi Arabia, mm-hmm. I had a job there. I'm mentoring these young reporters at this Saudi Gazette. When I got off the plane, I was in terrible pain. My back was really killing me. And for the 3 months I was there the first time, I couldn't raise my toes. I was just, it was a lot of terrible sciatic pain. Mm. So the next time I went back to Saudi Arabia, I took one of those exercise balls that you sit on when your back is pain. And back then you didn't have the pump, so you had to blow it up, and then unblow it. And so I flew to Khartoum with my exercise ball, and so there was a knock at the door, and the Sudanese intelligence officer was there, and he had this guy with him, and he wouldn't tell me who he was. So come on in, and I offered the guy, the mysterious guy, the desk chair, and the intelligence agent lay down on my bed and went soundly asleep. So it left me with this guy that I quickly discerned was an al-Qaeda member, and so I sat down on the ball, and he was over there, and I started asking him questions, and he knew everything. And I thought, Jesus, who is this guy? And so I flew back to America, and I researched him, and I triangulated, and I came up with Mohammed Loy Boyazid. His Qaeda name was Abu Rida al-Suri. And he was the guy who took the notes when al-Qaeda was founded. It's in his handwriting. And I suddenly, holy shit, I was talking to the guy that has been in al-Qaeda from the moment it started, and wow. I didn't know that. So I flew back to Khartoum, and he wouldn't see me, and that was disappointing. And so finally he agreed if I came again, he would talk to me. And so I flew back. I said, Loé, it's a lot of trouble coming to Khartoum. Why didn't you see me last time?
Yeah.
He said, well, I didn't know how seriously to take you. When we met the first time, you were sitting on a balloon. So that's how I got into al-Qaeda.
Wow.
It was, when bin Laden left Sudan, there's a case to be made. We should have just left him alone. But
because we helped bin Laden originally, right? We helped him against the Soviet Union.
Yes, in that sense, we didn't directly give money to him, but we were fighting the same cause, and so in that sense we were allies. But there was a myth that that we were underwriting him. That never was true. Nor would he even want it.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he got plenty of money from Saudi Arabia. He didn't need ours.
Yeah.